Hey, what's going on, guys? So I received a lot of really good feedback on my last video on the MTG Salvation forums, especially from Axelrod and Magic Merrill. I want to give a really big thank you, shout out to those two guys. They're kind of sages, experts that you see on MTG Salvation that give a lot of really good advice on drafting and deck building and just how to play Magic in general. And I've learned a lot from them. So they really appreciate them putting in the time to help me out. Axelrod originally did a pick by pick commentary explaining his thoughts on what I was doing, but apparently that was lost. Merrill did a pick by pick commentary on the first pack, and so I'm going to just go through that here. So pack 1, pick 1. I picked the Akron Horse. I have no idea why. Actually, no, I do know why. The reason is because I'm a noob, and I saw gold, I saw that it was rare, and I was just immediately blinded to everything else. Even though I've gone up against many of these cards and they've done so much better than the Akron Horse, like the Shipwreck Singer, right? Like, let's say that I was somehow able to get into black-white. That thing has ruined me many times. Even like the Sedge Scorpion does work. I've gone up against a Akron Horse, I think, twice, 3 times now. The first time was actually better for me because I had a 0/4 blocker on the table, and the second time it really didn't do a whole lot. So Magic Merrill suggested Nimbus Naiad over the Akron Horse. That makes a lot of sense, right? And like I said, Shipwreck Singer, that's committing myself to black-white right off the bat, and there's not a huge chance that my first pick is going to be in my deck. Picking blue is, never really bad in Theros. I can go blue-white or something, blue-black or something. So there's a greater chance that Nimbus Naiad is going to make it into the deck. The other thing that really stands out, I guess the Borderland Minotaur, the Sedge Scorpion, or something like that, but I get the feeling that the Sedge Scorpion has a much higher chance of wheeling than that Nimbus Naiad. So it bestows for 5. You get a +2/+2 flying. There's a lot of really big beefy guys that you can make fly +2/+2, make it even bigger for just 5 mana, and that's definitely the correct choice. Pack 1, pick 2. It looks like I picked God's Willing, and Merrill agreed with me there. There's not really a ton of other amazing options here. The Emissary, actually, is a really good card. Let's see here. Yeah, it can't be blocked by 2 or more creatures, +3/+3. The problem is that God's Willing is I mean, in my newbie assessment, God's Willing is pretty OP. For a single white mana, you get the Scry 1, gives protection. That's pretty ridiculous. So Merrill agreed with that choice. The next one, pack 1, pick 3, Nemesis Immortals. So at this point, I'm looking at green-white. There's a Titan Strength there, and I actually drafted a Titan Strength later on in the first pack 1, pick 7. And that's actually, I think that's something that I'm doing wrong. I shouldn't be drafting combat tricks right up front. It's more important to get a good number of creatures. Nemesis Immortals, great card. It can do damage much earlier than a lot of the other monstrous creatures just because of the ability that it has. Pack 1, pick 4. I picked Arena Athlete, and Magic Merrill says time to feed. So that makes tons of sense, right? Because I'm already kind of in white. I'm already heading towards the direction of green, that is. And then picking up something like Arena Athlete that is not, I don't think it's bad. Maybe it is, but it's not one of the amazing heroic cards, I guess. There's much better heroic cards than Arena Athlete. Time to Feed is great. That's green removal, right? And if I broke out the Nemesis of Mortals and the other guy has something big, I can trump it with Time to Feed. So obviously, looking back in retrospect, with one green card, one white card, and one card that's not going to make the deck, Time to Feed makes a lot more sense than Arena Athlete. But I chose Arena Athlete, and I ended up with 3 colors, and I kept complaining like this deck doesn't have any direction to it, and probably just the early incorrect choices I made contributed to that. Pack 1, pick 5. I got lucky because I passed up one Time to Feed that I should have taken, and another one showed up. But instead I went Breaching Hippocamp, which I think is actually a really good card. I would argue, in fact, that it's actually better than Time to Feed. Also, like I was saying, drafting creatures early on versus drafting combat tricks. Time to Feed is not a combat trick. It's a fight card. I guess you can see it as removal. But the problem is I don't have any blue. And the other issue is that I'm already going green. I mean, with Nemesis of Mortals in my pool, then it would make sense to try to get that into my deck, and I guess the way to get it into my deck is to draft more green cards. So I'd be looking at either Savage Surge, Time to Feed. Time to Feed, obviously the superior card. For some reason I went Breaching Hippocamp. Not really sure why. I like the fact it has flash. You can kind of flash it in to block something, or flash it in at the end of someone's turn, so that you have the mana free the next turn. But yeah, definitely. Given that I have Nemesis Immortals already, I could go green-white if I picked Time to Feed. But I picked Breaching Hippocamp, which ended up not making the deck because I went red-white. I know a lot of people suggest that you keep yourself open when you're drafting. Don't just start off and draft just the color of the rare that you get in the first pack, right? Pack 1, pick 1. So I was trying to keep myself open, but honestly, I think I kept myself a little bit too open. I mean, open to the point that I have no direction. And the problem there is that I was passing up a lot of really good cards that could have made the deck, but didn't. I, in the end, drafted a bunch of cards that were not in the colors that I ultimately played. So, kind of wasting your early picks. Pack 1, pick 6. I chose the Crone Hoplite. Magic Merrill suggested Ferrospan Centaurs. So, Ferrospan Centaurs, I've learned since I played this game that it's a great card. I think I looked at the card and I see it as, well, it doesn't have any abilities, right? It's just a 3/7, but wow, 3/7 is actually really beefy. It can block nearly everything that isn't monstrous. It kills most of the stuff, most of the creatures out there. But I think I was drafting based on previous experience, and I had gone up against Boros decks that played a Crone Hoplite, and a few of them that made it very big. Eventually, from what I remember, Crone Hoplite actually played a pretty big role in the games that I played. But that isn't to say that I wouldn't have had a stronger deck had I stuck to green. And it seems like Magic Merrill is suggesting that I probably should have gone green, based on the cards that were given, the cards that I saw, and just the fact that I got an early Nemesis Immortals. So yeah, so he chose Ferrospan Centaurs. I chose a Crone Hoplite. Pack 1, pick 7. I ended up choosing Titan Strength, and Merrill suggested Benthic Giant. This is obviously a clear mistake on my part. The Titan Strength is not a rare or uncommon card. You see them everywhere. So even if I were to stay in red-white, I wouldn't necessarily need to stick with or to take a combat trick. But with Breaching Hippocamp in my pool, it would have made a lot more sense to pick up the Benthic Giant. Let's say I get an Aqueous form later on and pop it onto him, then and I can do a lot of really big damage. But I chose a Titan Strength, which the whole picking up combat tricks a little bit too early. When at this point I only had 5 creatures, so that didn't make a lot of sense. And the last pack, I picked Minotaur Skullcleaver because I was pretty committed to red at this point, and I felt like I needed more creatures. So Portent of Betrayal, when I didn't think Portent of Betrayal was a good idea, but Wavecrest Trident is one of those really good hero cards that people seem to want to draft. The fact that everyone had a Breaching Hippocamp means that it would have made a lot of sense to pick up that Wavecrest Trident. So yeah, that is the first 8 picks, the first pack. Meryl's commentary. What Meryl was saying is that I should have ended up at blue-green after pack 1, but really my decisive pick being a Crone Hoplite brought me into white-red. And I got lucky on my subsequent packs that I was able to pick up some pretty decent red-white cards. I think I got the Fnatic Emojis. I got a couple other pretty decent cards in that color, but that's not for me being a good drafter. That's me being a bad drafter, but stumbling into some of these good cards. So let's take a look at the deck that I finally built. So like I said, my original the recording of the first round was lost, and then the second round was a bye. So I ended up building a deck at the end of the draft building portion that I played in the first round. Realized I made a couple mistakes, changed a few things out. So this is actually the deck that I played in round 3. Magic Merle was saying that I left out the Temple of Triumph, and yeah, I completely forgot. So by round 3, I ended up putting that in. Axelrod is saying that in this deck, I definitely do not need 17 lands. And yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense, right? I've only got 1, 2, and 3 drops. I think Fnatic is the only 4-drop I have, the Fnatic Amogus. But other than that, everything is 1 to 3 drops. So this is supposed to be a really aggressive, very fast-paced deck. I think I've seen people play, decks like this and they've played 15 lands or something like that. I don't know if the correct route would have been 15 lands and the Temple of Triumph, or 14 lands Temple of Triumph. But in this situation, yeah, I could have dropped back in lands, brought in some of the other cards, and maybe that would have saved me in some situations. One of the problems is, I guess I kind of stuck to just a very hard and fast rule that everyone tells newbie drafters, which is your deck when you draft, you want 15 creatures, you want 23 non-lands, non-basic lands, and 17 lands. And that's a very good rule when you first start, but at the same time it does depend on the deck, right? I think a more hard and fast rule is you don't want to go over 40 cards. It doesn't make a lot of sense. You're the Limited Resources podcast has your punting value when you go past 40 cards. But your land card ratio, your land spell ratio, is a little bit more fluid than that. And I think I didn't even think about it. I just looked for 15 creatures, got up to 23 spells, and popped in 17 lands with the suggest, and that was that. That was probably the wrong way to go. Alright, so let's take a look at some of the specific suggestions that people had. The most popular was definitely that I should have added those other 2 Dragon Mantles. Let me just go ahead and read what people wrote. Axelrod wrote on MTG Salvation forums, "I would have definitely played your other 2 Dragon Mantles, plus Traveling Philosopher, plus Deathbellow Raider, plus Chosen by Heliod. I would have dropped the Setessan Battle Priest, Spark Jolt, and the Priest of Iroas. With just one power, the two priests just don't have enough punch to be worth it. The Raider and the Philosopher are just better. And the Spark Jolt is only situationally good. The Mantles make anything a threat, plus they draw extra cards. The Chosen is like a Mantle, though not quite as good. Magic World said that I should have added the two Dragon Mantles over the Priest of Iroas and Setessan Battle Priest. So, that makes a lot of sense. The Dragon Mantle, it's a cantrip, so I'm going to be able to replace it, cycle through my deck a lot faster. I mean, I added one Dragon Mantle, but yeah, absolutely. Imagine if I had 3 Dragon Mantles, then I could pick up all the cards, the other cards that I need, as well as beefing up my my heroic cards. And also, oh yeah, there's Fire Breathing, by the way, but you know, activating the heroic powers on my guys, as well as cycling through, because, you know, how many times was I sitting there saying, I really could use a Lightning Bolt, or I really could use that Cavalry Pegasus. I've had a bunch of dudes on the, I think a couple times I had a bunch of guys on the ground, and Cavalry Pegasus coming in, making everyone fly, definitely would have been pretty nasty. Oh yeah, and I had those two-headed Cerebuses as well, and the Fire Breathing probably would have been pretty horrendous with Double Strike in the first strike phase. I probably could have killed off a lot of stuff. The universal comment was, I really should have taken the Setessan Battle Priest. That was definitely a mistake. And yeah, I think I might have said this already, but you know, I kind of knew that going into it. 1/3 for 2 power and a heroic power that really doesn't do a whole lot. It gains you 2 life, but you know, looking at the deck that I had, life gain isn't really the goal in this deck. And in fact, had I spent a lot of time trying to trigger that heroic and gain a lot of life, I definitely would have lost every game, because that's not what the deck is asking for. The deck is asking for something like what Axelrod suggested, the Deathbellow Raider, right? This is also a 2-drop, but rather than 1/3, as a Setessan Battle Priest is, it's now a 2/3. It's got, you could say, a drawback, that is that it's got to attack every turn, if able. But that's not really a drawback in my deck, right? Because my deck is supposed to be aggressive, my deck is supposed to be attacking. So, you know, having a 2/3 attacking by turn 3, not really a big deal. I think I kind of looked at it and I thought, well, you know, I don't have the black to regenerate it. But that's not really that bad, right? Get a couple swings in, even if it dies, it dies. By that point, I'll probably have something else on the board. Had I put in those other 3 Dragon Mantles, I would have cycled through my deck even faster and found, you know, the really big heroic stuff that to get off the ground. And plus, you know, I had, what, 2 Akroan Hoplites, so having something that's automatically swinging anyways wouldn't have hurt. Having the ability to regenerate would have been nice, but I'm not positive I would have had those 3 mana open every single time, just to ensure that I could have regenerated him. So that's not exactly the biggest deal. The other card that people were saying isn't really good, Priest of Iroas. It's 1/1 for 1, and it's got this special power, 3 and a white, destroy target enchantment. So obviously, as you know, in Theros there's a lot of enchantments, and I was envisioning myself in a situation where I'd be up against weapons. Are those enchantments? A god is definitely an enchantment, or a bestow creature that was just kicking my butt, and I'd have this on the table. This is kind of magical Christmas land, right? This is sort of the best case scenario, is that I had this on the table against something gigantic, and I also had 4 mana open, and I would stack this thing and win the game because of that. So that's a very specific set of conditions that never occurred. That now thinking about it rationally, is it really worth it to give up a spot in my deck just for that one situation? And ultimately, yeah, the answer is no. The other card that Axelrod was saying I probably should have thought twice about is Spark Jolt, which I'm not positive I really agree. Yeah, it's situational, absolutely. Either it removes a 1/1, or it tacks on that one additional damage to after combat to get rid of something. It's not a cantrip. It doesn't draw a card. It scries 1. But is this half a Magma Jet? Probably not. Probably not. Two Spark Jolts isn't a Magma Jet. So yeah, this is very situational. I can't remember now whether or not this actually happened or not, whether or not I even used it to any great effect. But yeah, I could see taking other cards. Some of the cards that they were saying that I should take, Traveling Philosopher, 2/2 for 2. It's just a solid card. Once again, I think I kind of had that newbie mindset. It doesn't have any powers. It doesn't sack it and destroy everything. It doesn't have anything like that. It's just straight up 2/2 for 2, which is not bad at all. The other thing that Axelrod was saying is Chosen by Heliod. It's also cantrip. Replaces itself. It's an enchantment, so I guess it inherently targets things, meaning that it would also trigger my heroics. It gives things a little bit bigger of a butt, so it can it allows my creatures to survive a little bit longer. So yeah, in a nutshell, the recommendations were those other 2 Dragon Mantles were pretty important, especially considering that I didn't need 17 lands in the deck. So if anything, let's say I drop down to 15 lands, opens up 2 slots for those Dragon Mantles, that probably would have been a much faster, much more consistent deck, right? And then there's a couple creatures that I should have taken. Priest of Iroas, Citizen Battle Priest, that are just a waste of space. I should have replaced them with other cards such as this one, Traveling Philosopher that we just talked about, or Deathbell Raider. Spark Jolt, maybe I could replace that with a Chosen by Heliod. And now, looking at it like that probably makes a lot of sense. Rather than having removal that only removes a one toughness creature, having another heroic enabler, since that's kind of what I was going for. So now that kind of makes sense, that based on Axelrod's and Magic Meryl's suggestions, that if you're going to be playing this deck that is red-white heroic aggressive deck, put in the cards that make more sense to do that, such as a Dragon Mantle, such as a Chosen by Heliod, obviously, or such as a Deathbell Raider. Obviously, Citizen Battle Priest has no real place in a deck like that unless I just didn't have enough creatures. Alright, so let's take a look at some of the comments that I got regarding the actual games themselves. So this is game 1, and this is a position that Axelrod was talking about, and both Axelrod and Magic Meryl made the point that I was playing my combat tricks at the wrong time. You probably saw I was playing the combat tricks when I was declaring attackers. Obviously, when I play Magic face-to-face at a table, I use combat tricks after the blockers are declared. The reason why I was using them when I was declaring attackers is because I wasn't really familiar with the Moto interface. I'm a little bit more familiar with how the software works, but I think that there was a few times that I accidentally pressed an F4 or an F6. I'm still not even positive which one is which, but I pressed one of those buttons thinking that I was just gonna skip to the next step, and I just gave up priority for the rest of the turn and didn't get to play my tricks. So I was a little bit paranoid basically when I was playing this, and just to make sure that the combat trick was applied, I applied it during the declare attacker step, which is of course the wrong time. That's no longer even a trick anymore, and the correct time would be during the instance portion of the declare blocker step. So here is the video from game 1. This is I don't know, is it called an alpha strike? I just swung with everything. The problem is, what I should have done, according to Axelrod, and he's right here, I should have gotten rid of one of his one of his return phalanxes with Chain to the Rocks in main phase 1. Then he would only be left with one return phalanx, one tormented hero, and one baleful eidolon. I could have gotten rid of the baleful eidolon with that Priest of Eros. That's the entire reason that I drafted her. I had the mana open as well, and you can see right here I'm casting that combat trick at the wrong time. But if I was worried about that death touch, then I probably could have just sacked the priest and gotten rid of the baleful eidolon. One of the return phalanxes would be chained to the rocks, so all he would have left is one return phalanx, one tormented hero. And of course, if I had played this correctly, he wouldn't know which of the attackers I was putting my coordinated assault on, or he wouldn't know that I even had it. So he wouldn't be privy to all the information and wouldn't be able to optimize his blocking strategy. What he ends up doing is double blocking my phalanx leader with a return phalanx and a tormented hero, and he places the other return phalanx onto the Crone Hoplite. If one of the return phalanxes was chained to the rocks, and he wasn't aware of the coordinated assault, then one of the return phalanxes would have to block the Crone Hoplite like he's doing here, and I guess his tormented hero would be up against my phalanx leader, which would be, 2-1 less, so it'd still just be a 1-1. And then I would pop the surprise. This would definitely take care of a lot more of his guys in one turn and lead to a quick kill the next game. So that's game 1. That's definitely what I should have done. I played a couple online games since I played this game, and I've gotten used to the Moto interface, and now I know how to properly use combat tricks and stuff like that. But that was definitely a big drawback when I played this game, and I've learned since then. But just figuring out when to take advantage of all the tools that you have available to you, such as the priest power or chain to the rocks, and maximizing the efficiency. And you can see here I actually tried to cast Chain to the Rocks in the middle of combat, forgetting that it was an enchantment. But maximizing the efficiency of all these powers is really the important thing, and I kind of failed to do it. Okay, so in game 2, I made a number of mistakes. The first mistake was, this is turn 2, and I had this Hopeful Eidolon in hand, and I just throw it out there. And both Magic Merle and Axelrod both say this is a really bad idea. Don't play the Hopeful Eidolon turn 2 when there's other alternatives. Obviously, I have the Setessan Battle Priest. Magic Merle is saying that the Hopeful Eidolon is an aura. It is not a creature unless there's an emergency. And as you can see, all the opponent has is a 0-3 defender. There's no emergency right now. I should have played that Setessan Battle Priest and bestow the Hopeful Eidolon on something else later, especially since it bestows at 4, a very low cost for bestow. I think I had this idea that since the Hopeful Eidolon has lifelink, I was just going to ping him for a single each turn and gain a single each turn or something like that. But obviously, I'm not even pinging him for a single each turn with that Sylvan Caryatid out there. So I had this bright idea: hey, I'll toss on the Dragon Mantle, I'll buff up the Hopeful Eidolon to 3-1 next turn, bust through the Sylvan Caryatid, but then he throws out a Nessium Asp, and so that plan is completely out the window. So yeah, what I really should have done was play the Setessan Battle Priest. I mean, I have her in my deck anyways, might as well take advantage of it. And then later on, use the Hopeful Eidolon to bestow onto something. I think I just got into this mindset that I had to be on the offensive. I had the aggressive deck, and I was just going to just throw everything out there. Like what I did right here with the Phalanx Leader. I drew the Phalanx Leader on the cantrip and said, hey, throw it out there, right? Well, Axelrod is saying, yeah, that's a very bad idea. There's no point in throwing out the Phalanx Leader when it can't do anything. First of all, it can't bust through the Sylvan Caryatid. Also, since I don't have any way of really activating his heroic, I mean, I guess I could Spark Jolt him or something like that. Bad idea. There's no... I'm 2 drops away from bestowing the Observant Alseid onto the Phalanx Leader. So essentially, I'm just putting out the Phalanx Leader and asking him to get rid of it. Maybe with a time defeat now that he has an Nessium Ast or something, but I'd be losing it for 0 mana. So the next turn, now that I've got 4 land, I just forget to play the Battle Priest. I could play both the Crowing Crusader and the Setested Battle Priest, and for some reason it just slips my mind. I just don't play the Battle Priest, which is kind of a big mistake. And then a turn or 2 later, I'm in this situation without the Battle Priest, where he has his Nessian Asp about ready to strike. So I've got this Fanatic Amogus. I'm thinking I'll block with a Fanatic, Spark Jolt, that's 5 damage, and I'll take care of the Nessian Asp. Well, the real problem is I completely forgot. He actually does have enough mana to go monstrous, because I completely forgot that Sylvian Caryatid also produces mana. So he's got the 7 that he needs to go monstrous 4. That thing's going to turn into an 8/9. Had I brought in the Setessan Battle Priest at the right time, then I think I would have, yeah, I would have 9 damage if I also include the Spark Jolt. That if I just stack blocked everything, I could kill off his Nessian Asp. That is, if he doesn't have, you know, a Giant Growth or whatever, some sort of pump spell. Well, I guess he'd use all his mana on going monstrous, but you know, I would lose all my guys anyways, so it wouldn't be a good idea. Axelrod makes the point that I shouldn't even be blocking at this point. I've got 21 life, and you know, you're supposed to be using life as a resource. And since I've got my Phalanx Leader, I've got some guys out. I've got actually at this point enough mana to bestow the Observant Alseid. I should really be playing more on the offensive. I think I go on the defense too quickly and start chump blocking too quickly. What I really should be doing is taking advantage of the Phalanx Leader's heroic of putting +1/+1 counters on all my guys, and trying to make as big a force as possible. I know I've got other guys coming down the pipe as well. This was, number one, is this a miscalculation, but it was also a careless use of Spark Jolt. So Axelrod kind of makes a point that, you know, if you're going to use Spark Jolt, if you're going to block and do the whole Spark Jolt thing, you don't need to cast Spark Jolt when you're declaring blockers. In fact, I'm not positive that he was planning on going monstrous. Maybe if I just blocked with a Fanatic, then he would have just killed my Fanatic and that would be that. Well, the 4 damage that the Fanatic does to the Nessian Asp stays until the cleanup or whatever, until the end step. So I could actually wait until his end step to cast the Spark Jolt, killing off his Nessian Asp. He doesn't know I have the Spark Jolt. So once again, I kind of gave away my hand by doing things out of order, and that's something I'm not even positive I would have done properly if I was playing a sit-down face-to-face Magic game. But yeah, so that is the last comment on the videos. I think I learned a lot doing this, and I'm gonna try to continue doing this. I didn't realize exactly how much work it was. I'm, you know, doing all the editing and cutting and pasting everything together, but it definitely helped me a lot. I want to once again send a really big thanks to Axelrod and Magic Merrill for their feedback, and just analyzing the way I play the game, not just the drafting but also the playing. Yeah, I'm hoping to continue doing these because I feel like I'm getting better by doing them, and you know, I'd kind of like to have a record that I can see myself actually progress and get better. So yeah, hopefully I'll have another video soon, and we'll do the same thing. Thanks a lot.